and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name is Thomas, back on the channel today for a video that I didn't expect to be making a couple of weeks ago, but I am joined by Marc from the True Faith podcast, obviously a Newcastle fan, to talk maybe some positives about Rafa Benitez. Obviously, his potential appointment has been met with overwhelming disappointment, basically from the majority of the fan base. Obviously, we can see why the Liverpool links are a disgrace, but it looks like Marc is going to be very happy. He had a great time on Tyneside at the end of the day. I'm sure Newcastle fans miss him a lot. But Marc, well, thanks for coming back on the channel in these kind of unusual circumstances. How are you doing today?
I'm good, mate. Yes, very unusual. It's an appointment that I feel very jealous about, to be honest, because there was always hope that if the takeover happens at Newcastle, and that's a big word, if, that Rafa Benitez was the number one target by the consortium to bring him back to the football club, because he has got unfinished business as far as he's concerned, as far as the supporters are concerned. So the first thing I would feel is very, very, jealous if that happens. But I assume, judging by what I'm reading and hearing by the Everton fans, it doesn't seem to be too popular on Merseyside. So a strange one for you.
Yeah, very peculiar, especially considering the fans have made their opposition very vocal. It seems like the board are kind of ploughing forwards anyway and kind of ignoring that protest, it's very disappointing to see. But obviously, there will be plenty of negative opinions about Rafa Benitez already on the channel. There will be plenty more to come, but that's not going to be in this video, I'd imagine. I remember what it was like when Rafa was the Newcastle manager. Very different buzz around the city. Obviously, as everyone knows, I am a Geordie. Obviously, I'm not from Liverpool. I remember what it was like. It was a much better time, definitely, than it is now. But just starting off, what were your thoughts basically on Rafa's connection with the fans? Obviously, that was a massive part of his appointment. In terms of, we'll come to his football and tactics, his ability later, but his connection with the fans is going to be essential here, especially considering he's already been the Liverpool manager. He's got that boundary to break, but he's never really struggled having a strong affinity with the fans, has he?
Not at all. Every club he's managed, I would think, when he was at Liverpool, he had a big connection with the Justice for 96 campaign. I believe he put a lot of money behind it and things like that. At Newcastle, he won the fans over from day one, probably because we thought it was going to be a change in direction from the norm that we're used to under Mike Ashley. Second-rate managers. Obviously, we've got one now, and he just connected the whole fan base, but not just for the fact that he seemed a decent man and a brilliant football manager. It was he had a big plan, he had a project, and he seemed to not just tap into the first team. It was also the academy. He said the training facilities weren't up to scratch. He seemed to connect the community. He would do talk-ins with the supporters. He would be heavily involved with the charity events. He just connected the whole community as well, not just the 50,000 or so that go to the football games. And it was such a sad day when he felt as if he couldn't stay. But you're right. I mean, he's got a bigger task on his hand to win over the Everton supporters, because obviously of what he said in the past, and also the fact that he has got Liverpool blood running through him. Let's be honest. But you never know. He's nothing but professional. He's a man of integrity, I believe, and I genuinely believe that once he is appointed, if he's appointed, everything regarding Newcastle, Madrid, Chelsea, Liverpool, and in particular for you supporters in regards to Liverpool, he'll be wanting to batter Liverpool. He'll be wanting to beat them. You could sense that when he was Newcastle manager. So sometimes you've just got to go with the flow. He'll probably not win over some supporters. They'll probably already made their mind up. They just don't want him at the football club. And if it'll be interesting to see if people boycott because of it. That's a big statement from supporters if they do that. But it's a results business, and if he makes his progress, he's beat Liverpool and win a cup, he's going to be an absolute legend.
Yeah, very true. And what a couple of lads from the Toffee Blues have already said is, he is a man of integrity. We know that he's always been a brilliant professional in his career. Even when he was at Chelsea, he went there with opposition, still did a very good job, managed to win them over. This is a completely different task. Obviously, there's the parallels between Chelsea, Liverpool and Everton are completely different. But I do have faith in his integrity, and I do have faith that he would genuinely want to do a good job. And what I have heard from a couple of people is that maybe it's a good thing that he's going to try even harder to win over the fans, and he knows he's got that task ahead of him that's going to make him potentially even work harder than he was before. And something you mentioned there, him having an affinity with the academy. Obviously, we all know about the terrible, training facilities at Newcastle, players in paddling pools and everything in recovery. I remember seeing those photos. But a definite moment of concern I have seen on Twitter, it was his kind of lack of promoting youth. Obviously, we saw Kevin Mbabu, I think, just before the relegation. He ended up getting released. Ivan Toney was obviously sold on. We know how well he's doing now. So a couple of, really good young players there that maybe didn't quite make it into the first team, didn't have that pathway into the first team potentially. So you think maybe there is a reason for concern, because we do have a couple of good young players at the moment who could potentially break into the first team in the next couple of seasons. And I think Everton fans have a right to maybe be concerned that he doesn't always have a tremendous track record of actually bringing those players through.
I think at Newcastle, though, Thomas, his hands were tied a little bit. He knew that he couldn't take risks on young players. And it frustrates me at times when people use it as a little bit of a yardstick to bat away at Rafa, when people say, well, look at Ivan Toney, look at Adam Armstrong, players like that. And yes, they've scored goals, but it's in the Championship and it's in the third tier of football as well. If they start scoring goals in the Premier League, then yes, that's when you can turn around and go, Rafa got that one wrong. But, he's only human. He made some terrible signs. One of them, what stands out is Muto. But basically, excuse me, because he didn't have a big budget, sometimes I think it was it was political, Rafa. He would probably say to the board, look, you've given me 10 million to sign a striker. That's what I can get with 10 million. And he's nowhere near good enough. And sometimes it was a little bit of cat and mouse. You would play games. And that was always the frustrating part, because you felt as if it was never settled. In the 3.5 seasons he was at Newcastle, well, 10 games of the relegation season, but it was never settled. You never ever felt as if he was happy. The board were happy with him. The supporters were sort of just waiting for that day where he would be announced as departed. And but for the 3 full seasons I was at Newcastle, we progressed. Granted, in his final season, we finished a few positions lower than the previous one, but we got more points, and we started to play a brand of football that was totally different to what we were used to under Benitez. Because yes, he is seen a little bit negative, a little bit defence-minded, a little bit like Ancelotti in a way. But that wasn't a bad thing, because at Newcastle, you always felt as if you were in a game right up until injury time. I can't remember many occasions when a team battered us. I think Liverpool did once, I think 3 or 4-0. But apart from that, it was 1s and 2s. We were always in the game. But yeah, I think, I'll look back at Benitez's time on Tyneside, because we haven't been spout with any success really, but we've had a couple of flirtations with Silverware. But I look at Benitez as probably joint second with Bobby Robson after Kevin Keegan, and how much I really, really love the fella. Perhaps the expectations are that low now that just having someone like Benitez as someone to hang your hat on, your expectations aren't as low as ours now. You are slowly progressing. You've had Ancelotti. I don't know whether you see that as a bit of a step down, getting Benitez, but from an outsider, I see that as a step up. He's a successful manager. He wins trophies everywhere he goes. And again, I go back to what I said at the start, Thomas. I'm very envious if he's getting Benitez,
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that, because I do remember the kind of the politics that there were going on with the board. I remember in the Championship, it went down to the last day for us to win the title, even though that squad was probably more than good enough to, see it through, regardless of the drama, how much of that had to do with Benitez. I mean, we'll never know, but I think that definitely had a role to play, that he obviously wanted a better squad when he came to the Premier League. And by no means am I comparing the Everton and the Newcastle board in terms of investment. We all know about Mike Ashley, very publicised, but the Everton board is chaos at the end of the day. No one knows what the structure is. It's basically just, it's incompetence everywhere. There doesn't seem to be any kind of structure. We don't even know who it is responsible for appointing Rafa Benitez here. Is it Bill Kenwright? Is it Director of Football Marcel Brand? So he will have that to play with. And if we're going to have another few seasons of boardroom politics, it's not going to be particularly great, especially going into the new stadium. But we know that was a problem at Newcastle, not in the same way by any means, but there will be. I definitely do see that as being an element. But in terms of from a footballing perspective, this is probably my only positive, my only interest at this point in the appointment is it's a similar style to Ancelotti. We've seen managers come in and try and change the style so radically, then another one comes in, we go backwards, and then it's backwards and forwards, and no one really knows, well, for the past few seasons, what our identity has been, if you can even call it that necessarily. So I think, most people do know what the Rafa Benitez style is, but if you could just summarise what it was like at Newcastle and what we can maybe expect if the appointment goes through.
I think it's, if you base it on actual tactics, he is very, very defence-minded. But he's very, very clever at recognising key players and what their strengths are. And one thing I will say is the amount of players who progressed, and the likes of Lascelles, he went from a reserve basically to captain within 6 months. And he was on the verge of the England squad for the 2018 World Cup. He seemed to get an extra 10, 15% out of players who were very, very limited. Tactically wise, for me, I can always just see him with a back five, wing backs, settled midfield. But we didn't seem to suffer from injuries under Benitez. The conditioning of the players was always top notch. It's unrecognisable now, the amount of injuries we've got. He had a huge backroom staff. I think there was up to about 12 people he brought in with him. And it's interesting that you mentioned before regarding the board. We haven't got a board. We've got an owner. We've got one man in Lee Charnley who just dictates everything else. So we haven't got a board. But I personally think Benitez will probably only take the job if he's got assurances that the board will be settled. They'll not interfere with what he's trying to do on the football pitch. He'll obviously demand money to invest in better players because he's got a good squad. But to challenge, and you tailed away at the back in the last season, but to get back up towards that top 6, top 4, whatever you want to call it, he's very, very strong and demanding. And I can only see you're mentioning chaos, which I'm not aware of at the Everton board. I can only see that as a positive if you get someone like Benitez, because he'll not stand for that, and he'll do all his fighting, and he'll represent the supporters. And that's one key thing I believe Benitez was good at. He spoke like a supporter. He used the media very well, by the way. A lot of the media, hung on his every word. But it seems to me that the actual national press don't think highly of Benitez. He gets slated on TalkSport. There's a lot of journalists don't like him. Luke Edwards up here cannot stand him for some reason. So he's got a lot of enemies. But a successful man is a ruthless man. And does he really care what the media think? Probably not. And I'll tell you one thing as well, Thomas, is he hates losing. You look at the calibre of managers over the years, the likes of Mourinho, Ancelotti, managers like that. He hated losing against them to the point where he probably drilled it that much into the players. You cannot lose this game because I've got my pride. But going back, I've gone off a little bit there, but going back to the tactics, the style, I still think that the way he ended the 2018-19 season, I did a quick recap there. We won 6 in the last 12, which doesn't sound fantastic, but it is for Newcastle. And we scored 20 goals. And he ended up going with a forward line of 3, 2 on either side and Rondon through the middle. Perez obviously got that big move to Leicester. For me, he doesn't look the same player in that team. Rondon's obviously went abroad. He was one of the best strikers I've seen for a long time. And Almiron looked absolutely fantastic. Almiron's went backwards a little bit under Steve Bruce. Lascelles, I touched on him before. He's not the same player at all under Steve Bruce. You look at the likes of Richie was in and out of the team. Sean Longstaff was seen as the next big thing under Benitez. He does not the same player. The list is endless. The amount of players who have went backwards under Steve Bruce, is that testament to Benitez being a good manager, or is that testament to Bruce being a poor one? There's probably a balance somewhere in the middle. But yeah, as you can probably tell, Thomas, I've got nothing but praise for the fella. But obviously the biggest political side of it all is trying to win over you supporters. It's obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say the last minor concern, it's not minor. I don't know why I said it's minor. The last concern from Everton fans really is time in China. Obviously, I don't know how much you know about that. He went there looking for a project, so that's what he claimed anyway. Obviously left Newcastle. You're all very disappointed. Did terribly in China. Kind of had a relegation threatened side. I don't know how much you know about that. A lot of it seems to have been down to, I mean, there was the pandemic. He moved to China without his family. We all know about that. But is there anything you know about that situation? Maybe, I don't know, settle some kind of concerns that maybe he's dropped off maybe as a manager in terms of his pedigree after going to China?
To be honest, when Benitez left, it took about probably a year for us to sort of get over it in a way. And obviously, as you say, we had the pandemic. I didn't really follow his time over there because, to be honest, it sounds a little bit deluded, but I didn't want to see him fail. I don't want to see him fail. I would love him to come to Everton and take you to the next level. Nothing would rub the media's face in it for me to see Benitez lift a trophy at Everton, or any other club. I would, a lot of Newcastle supporters are a bit upset because they've always seen him as like a Newcastle man. There's no loyalty in football. There isn't. As you get older, you realise that. There's a lot of things have happened with Newcastle players and managers over the year where you question their decisions and why they went to that club. Kevin Keegan, when Kevin Keegan walked back in '97, he said he wouldn't manage another football club. In 6 months, he was at Fulham, and within a couple of years, he was managing England. Yeah. And then he got the Man City job, and he was managing teams to beat Newcastle, and on occasion he did. So you sort of go, oh, how dare he manage a football club and be against Newcastle? But as I say, there's no loyalty in football, and unfortunately, I couldn't really appease his by mentioning his time abroad because ultimately I know little about it. But for me, someone like Benitez shouldn't be managing there. He took it as a quick fix. He took it because the money was ridiculous, let's be honest. But also he took it because maybe he didn't want to manage in the Premier League at that point. Maybe he didn't want to. Maybe he thought there was a way he would come back to Newcastle and didn't want to, be in Everton or an Arsenal or a Leicester or whoever. And maybe he didn't want to do that. But who knows? All we know is that the takeover's in limbo, and we're led to believe that Benitez is number one target, but he's not willing to wait anymore. And if a big club like Everton comes along, he'd be an idiot not to take it, as far as I'm concerned. Because let's be honest, he's not going to probably get one of the top four now. So his challenge now is to make Everton top four and prove everyone wrong. Yeah,
definitely. And you just mentioned loyalty in football there. I think Everton fans have learned definitely something in the past couple of weeks about, managers going back on their promises. Anyway, that kind of brings us to the end of the video, but just basically, just your final summarising thoughts. It's been an overwhelmingly positive video, which is obviously what we expected. But if the appointment goes through, which looks likely, what are your summary thoughts to basically convince a very underwhelmed, disappointed fan base that this might actually work out and it might not be the end of the world at the end of the day?
Give him time. It's your football club at the end of the day, or club as he calls it. It's your football club. If you're that strongly against it, give him a chance. If you still don't believe in him, or you're just so anti the fact that he was a Liverpool legend, just remember it's your club. So there'll be a time where he's not there anymore. So don't give up on your football club. They're making a decision, and as I said before, I strongly believe he wouldn't take this just as a fix. He wouldn't take it like the one in China. He'll look at your football club and see where he can be in 5 years' time. And in 5 years' time, you could be looking back on this and thinking, he's proved we're wrong. One thing, what will be guaranteed is he will get an unbelievable reception at St James's Park. And more than likely, we'll probably see his name down at Goodison. I think it's in between Christmas and New Year. We're down at your place. And it goes without saying, I think the Newcastle support will see his name like they did with Kevin Keegan, like they still do with Bobby Robson, From a Newcastle perspective, good luck to him. Hopefully we'll beat us twice again. Sorry, I had to get that in. But yeah, to conclude, it's your football club. If you're that strongly against it, there will be a time he's not there. But give him a chance, and I personally believe he's a right man for the job, and he will take us forward.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching, Marc. Where can our viewers find you? I'm sure we'll speak again for the matches in the upcoming season. Yeah. But where can the viewers find you before then?
It's just a True Faith podcast. I normally do the nostalgia-based ones, but we do a sort of a bi-weekly one with ex-pro Keith Gillespie, who spent many years at Newcastle, Blackburn, Leicester, etc. But yes, two favourite Corner UK, or my Twitter handle, which I'm sure you'll put in, is just NUFC_1980_1994. That's the period of football that I really, really enjoy. And on that note, Everton's most successful period was probably the 80s that I can remember. And I think your last cup win was it the 95 FA Cup? 95. So what's that now? You're looking at 26 years. I guarantee it won't be much longer.
Thanks for bringing that one up again. Yes.
hey, it's 1969, our last trophy, mate. So come on. But yeah, that's where you can find us, and I look forward to speaking to you all again next season.
Yeah, well, definitely. Thank you very much for coming on again. Thank you very much for watching. Be sure to let us know, if you haven't already, what your thoughts are on Rafa Benitez down in the comments below. It looks like it might just be a matter of time now, but we shall see. I mean, in this managerial kind of roundabout, we've seen Palace lose a manager last minute. We don't even know who Spurs are going for. Anything could still change. It looks like he might be the man, but we shall see. But thank you very much for watching, and join us next time on the Toffee Blues.